You thought it was a delay. You thought it was a detour. But what if I told you God never left the driver's seat? You were frustrated because it didn't happen when you wanted. You cried, prayed, begged, and still the door didn't open. But maybe, just maybe, it wasn't supposed to open then. Maybe God wasn't saying no. He was saying not yet. Because what He's preparing for you is just as important as what He's preparing in you. You've been measuring the silence, but God's been arranging the setup. You've been watching the clock, but He's been working the cross. See, you thought it was rejection, but it was redirection. You thought you missed it, but God was making it. Because what you called a delay, God calls design. What you saw as a setback, God is using as a stage. And when He reveals it, you'll see He didn't forget you. He was forming you. You prayed, you fasted, you believed. And still, it didn't happen. Not the way you imagined. Not in the time you expected. And the first thought that hits you is, maybe God said no. But what if that pause in your life wasn't a denial? What if the very thing you're calling a delay is really just God's preparation? Because God doesn't operate according to our clocks. He doesn't check your calendar before orchestrating your calling. He works in His own rhythm. And often that rhythm looks like stillness, like silence, like delay. But it's not a void. It's not an accident. It's intention. It's designed. You see, when God is about to do something significant through you, He will first do something deep in you. You want the platform, but He's building the character. You want the blessing, but He's shaping the capacity. That silence you're walking through, the confusion you're stuck in, that's not abandonment, it's alignment. He's preparing your spirit, your mindset, your endurance, and your faith muscles. Because the level of purpose He's calling you to requires a deeper level of preparation than you ever imagined. If God gave it to you too early, you might mismanage it. If He opened the door too soon, you might not have the wisdom to walk through it. Sometimes the most loving thing God can say is not yes, it's true no, but a not yet. Because He knows what you can't see. He knows what's coming. And He's not just preparing the blessing for you, He's preparing you for the blessing. The waiting room is not wasted space, it's holy ground. It's the soil where trust grows, where pride dies, and where clarity is born. We live in a culture that celebrates speed, fast breakthroughs, instant success, overnight results. But the kingdom of God is not microwave ministry. It's crock-pot character. It's slow, intentional, layered development. Because God is not just trying to get you somewhere. He's trying to make you someone. And becoming the person He's called you to be takes time. It takes tension. It takes trust. So when you feel like you're stuck in a delay, remember, it's not punishment, it's process. When Joseph was thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, and locked up in prison, it looked like delay. But every moment of that struggle was divine preparation. God wasn't punishing Joseph, He was positioning him. He was training his heart, sharpening his discernment, strengthening his endurance. Because the palace required something deeper than the dream. And if Joseph had skipped the process, he would have crumbled under the pressure of purpose. That's the same principle in your life. The job you didn't get, the relationship that didn't work out, the opportunity that fell through, wasn't the enemy always blocking you? Sometimes it's God protecting you from what you're not ready to carry. Because He loves you too much to let success sabotage you. He's preparing your character so your calling doesn't crush you. And while you're crying out for movement, He's calling you to maturity. The very thing you've been begging God to change may be the very thing He's using to change you. That delay has a purpose. That silence has a sound. That frustration has a function. And even though it feels like everything's on pause, God is still speaking, still working, still weaving something eternal behind the curtain. He doesn't waste time. He uses time. He bends time. And even the seasons that feel barren are full of seeds being planted deep beneath the surface. But here's what's hard. We often equate stillness with stagnation. We think if we're not moving forward, then we're not growing. But spiritual growth isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes the most powerful transformation happens when nothing seems to be happening at all. And if you're judging your progress by what you can see, you'll miss what God is doing in the unseen. You'll miss the roots going deeper. You'll miss the foundation being strengthened. You'll miss the grace being multiplied in the secret place. Because God's design isn't always visible. It doesn't always come with signs and wonders. And sometimes it comes wrapped in disappointments. Sometimes it comes dressed like delay. But if you're walking by faith, you won't need to see it to believe it. You'll trust that the God who began a good work in you is faithful to complete it. You'll believe that even this silence, this struggle, this standstill, is a piece of his greater plan. Because what he's doing in you is far more important than what's happening around you. When you feel stuck, remember that God is still steady. When you feel overlooked, remember he still sees. When you feel forgotten, remember you're still chosen. And even when your timeline doesn't match your expectation, his timing is always perfect. Not early, not late, just right. The delay is not the end of the promise. It's part of the process. It's the space where faith is forged and obedience is refined. And though you may not understand it now, one day you'll look back and realize that what felt like a delay was actually the very thing that prepared you for destiny. You've been watching the days pass, marking time on the calendar, wondering why it hasn't happened yet. You've been faithful, you've been obedient, and still it feels like you're stuck in the same place. You see everyone else moving forward. Getting promotions, getting married, launching businesses, walking into their dreams, while you're sitting there asking, God, did you forget me? But what if the wait is not about punishment, but about positioning? What if what feels like wasting time is actually God working overtime behind the curtain of your life? Because God doesn't owe you updates when he's unfolding something greater than your understanding can comprehend. The problem is, we equate silence with absence, but God's silence is not God's absence. It's often in the silence that he's moving most. And the longer the silence, the deeper the strategy. You see, while you're pacing the floor wondering what's taking so long, God is shifting things you can't even see. He's moving hearts. He's redirecting people. He's building bridges to places you didn't even know you needed to go. And sometimes he's not just changing situations. He's changing you so you're ready for what he's bringing you into. The delay is not dead space. It's divine space. It's a sacred pause where God is rewriting the script so it ends better than you imagined. But here's the challenge. Most of us only want the destination. We want the breakthrough, the promotion, the healing, the open door. But God is after something deeper. He's not just building a blessing. He's building belief. He's not just working on your circumstances. He's working on your soul. Because your faith isn't proven in moments of movement. Your faith is revealed in moments of waiting. So while you're watching for signs, God is watching your heart. He's looking to see if you'll still worship without the answer. He's watching to see if you'll still obey when there's no applause. Can you be trusted with silence? Can you be faithful in the hallway before the door opens? Can you still say yesel when you don't understand the why? Because we all want the miracle, but few want the mystery. We want the arrival, but we resist the unknown. Yet it's in the unknown where intimacy is birthed. It's in the mystery where trust grows roots. And when you stop demanding an explanation, you make room for revelation. You start to realize that God's hand was never off your life, even when his voice seemed distant. The same God who gave you the vision is the same God orchestrating its fulfillment, even when everything around you feels stuck. Sometimes the waiting is not for things to be prepared for you. It's for you to be prepared for them. That's why some doors haven't opened yet. Because if God opened it now, it might crush you. It might feed your pride instead of fueling your purpose. So he holds back the blessing not to hurt you, but to help you carry it when it comes. He's building endurance. He's stripping away idols. He's sharpening your spiritual hearing. Because where you're going requires a level of maturity that only comes through the furnace of delay. The Bible is full of stories where waiting looked like abandonment, but turned into alignment. Abraham waited, David waited, Joseph waited, Jesus waited. Every person God used greatly went through a season where it felt like nothing was moving, yet everything was shifting. The blessing was never canceled. It was just in process. If God made them wait, what makes you think you'll be any different? But the wait doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It often means you're exactly where He wants you. It's frustrating, yes, as the enemy will whisper lies in the waiting. He'll say things like, God forgot you. God's not listening. Everyone else is moving ahead, and you're being left behind. But don't let the enemy define your delay. He sees what God is doing, and he's trying to distract you from trusting it. Because the moment you give in to discouragement is the moment you start stepping out of alignment. Stay steady. Stay planted. Stay faithful. Because God is still writing your story, and He's not done. There's a reason the waiting feels heavy. It's because something weighty is coming. The greater the promise, the deeper the preparation. So when you feel like nothing's happening, remember, God is often the most active in the stillness. He's not stalling. He's setting things up. You just can't see it yet. But just because you can't trace His hand doesn't mean you can't trust His heart. Because even when it feels like time is standing still, God is never standing still. You have no idea what He's aligning behind the scenes, that conversation you don't know about, that door that's about to swing open, that healing that's already begun. That person who's being prepared to walk into your life. It's happening. It's all happening. But you won't see it until the right moment. And when it comes, you'll realize it didn't take too long. It came exactly on time. Because God's clock doesn't run on your schedule. It runs on His sovereignty. And in His time, every delay becomes a declaration of His divine design. The pain of delay is real. It cuts deeper than most people admit. It's not just about time passing. It's about hope slowly dimming. Every time you see someone else walk into what you've been praying for, a quiet ache forms in your heart. You celebrate them on the outside, but on the inside, you're wondering why it hasn't happened for you yet. You're stuck between gratitude and grief, between trusting God and silently questioning His timing. The delay isn't just a delay. It's a test, a tension, a pressure that builds over time. But what if that pressure wasn't meant to break you? What if it was designed to build something stronger in you than you even realized you needed? See, purpose doesn't come fully packaged with bows and celebration. It comes through pressure. It comes through waiting, through wondering, through wrestling with God in silence. And in that wrestling, something happens. In the waiting room of life, faith either shrinks or strengthens. And God knows it. He knows that without the delay, you'd run ahead too quickly. Without the delay, you'd settle for something smaller than what He's prepared. So He allows the tension. He allows the slow burn. Because He's not just answering your prayer. He's developing your capacity. You've been asking God for big things come with big responsibility. You can't carry a purpose that your character can't support. So while you're focused on the door opening, God is focused on your foundation holding. He's building integrity, resilience, dependence on Him. Not on outcomes, not on status, not on success. He's stripping away your need for control so that when the time comes, you're not clinging to the blessing, you're grounded in the one who gave it. That kind of strength doesn't come quickly. It's forged in fire. It's refined in delay. The pressure you feel right now isn't proof that God is distant. It's proof that God is preparing something deeper. That internal conflict, the constant wondering, the repeated surrender, that's the place where real growth happens. That's where trust becomes more than a word, it becomes your weapon. That's where faith grows muscles, and the longer the delay, the stronger the muscle. Free unanswered prayer. Every closed door, every silent season is a repetition in your spiritual gym, and you don't even realize it. But you're getting stronger. You're learning to praise without proof. You're learning to move without maps. You're learning to believe without benefit. It hurts, yes. And it's okay to admit that. You don't have to pretend delay doesn't sting. You don't have to fake a smile when you feel forgotten. But what you do with that pain is what determines what it produces. You can let the delay make you bitter, or you can let it make you better. You can let it push you away from God, or you can let it pull you closer. Because in the delay, God isn't punishing you. He's drawing you in. He's trying to teach you to hear His whisper when the noise of blessings isn't there to distract you. He's teaching you to stand on His word when all the signs say to sit down and give up. There's a pressure in delay that exposes what you really believe. When the timeline doesn't match the prophecy, do you still trust the promise when the fulfillment feels far away? Do you still follow the path? God isn't just preparing you for a moment. He's preparing you for a mission. And that kind of preparation doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in the grind, in the waiting, in the stretching. It happens in the nights where you cry and still say amen. It happens in the mornings where you get up and walk in obedience even when you feel empty. And just because others don't see the pain you're carrying doesn't mean God doesn't see it. He sees every tear, every frustration, every time you had to silence your own doubts just to keep moving. He sees how hard it is for you to keep believing when you have no visible reason to. And yet you're still standing. That's the strength He's building. That's the weight of glory that comes from pressing through pain. You may not be shouting, you may not be celebrating, but if you're still trusting, then you're still winning. Because pressure births power. Delay births depth, pain births purpose. And what you're carrying isn't small. It's something eternal. It's something sacred. And the reason it's taking time is because God is making sure it lasts. He's not trying to get you to a place quickly. He's trying to anchor you so that when the blessing comes, it doesn't blow you over. He's trying to root your identity so deeply in Him that the outcome doesn't define you. And maybe that's the real blessing. Not just what's coming, but who you're becoming. You're becoming someone who trusts through tears, someone who praises through pressure, someone who hopes when it hurts. And that kind of faith, that kind of resilience, that's what hell can't handle. That's what delay can't destroy. Because even though it hasn't happened yet, something powerful is happening in you. The pain is doing more than you realize. It's not wasted. It's not random. No, it's refining you for something greater than you can see right now. You planned it out. You mapped the route. You had it all lined up in your head. How it should go, when it should happen, and what it should look like. But then life took a sharp left. The door you thought would open slammed shut. The opportunity that looked promising vanished. The timeline you were trusting broke apart. And now you're wondering, God, did I miss it? But what if you didn't miss anything? What if the detour wasn't a mistake, but a message? What if the shift you're calling a setback is actually a setup for something greater than what you were aiming for? Because in the kingdom of God, nothing is wasted, not even the detours. God doesn't lead the way we expect it to. He rarely takes the shortest route. He doesn't always lead in straight lines. His path is often winding, confusing, full of turns that don't make sense at first. But it's in those turns that He does His deepest work. Because it's not just about getting you to a destination. It's about shaping the person who arrives there. And sometimes the only way to develop what your destiny requires is to take you on a road you didn't plan for. The long way, the hard way, the way that feels like a detour is often the only way that gets you strong enough to stay where He's taking you. Think about Moses. God could have led the Israelites straight into the promised land, but instead, He took them the long way around, through the wilderness, through the struggle, through the unfamiliar. Not because He was punishing them, but because He was preparing them. The land was ready, but they weren't. They needed the detour to unlearn Egypt. They needed the detour to grow in trust. They needed the detour to discover that their source wasn't the place. It was His presence. And just like them, you may be frustrated with the route you're on. You thought the promotion was coming. You thought the relationship was going to work. You thought the business would take off by now. But instead, you're in a place you didn't expect, doing things you didn't plan, trying to figure out how this connects to the vision you felt so clearly. But even detours are divine when you're walking with God. Even delays are on schedule in His timing. What looks like confusion to you is coordination in heaven. Because here's the truth. The detour develops what destiny demands. The straight path doesn't build resilience. The shortcut doesn't build faith. The fast track doesn't teach you how to trust when nothing is certain. It's the detours, the unexpected stops, the broken roads, the long nights that form in you the strength you'll need when you finally step into the promise. God knows what He put in you. He knows what He's calling you to do, and He knows what it takes to get you ready for it. Sometimes God has to reroute your plans to protect your purpose. He sees what you don't. He sees the danger you're unaware of. He sees the habits that need to be broken, the pride that needs to be stripped, the healing that needs to happen. And rather than letting you run into a blessing you're not ready to sustain, He detours you so you don't sabotage your own destiny. That relationship that ended may have felt like loss, but it was protection. That door that closed may have been rejection, but it was direction. God is not just reactive, He's strategic. And every twist in your story has been factored into His design. The problem is detours often come without explanation. God doesn't always give you the why. He doesn't always reveal the full plan. And in the silence, it's easy to grow cynical. It's easy to assume you made a wrong turn, that you misheard Him, that you messed up the moment. But grace covers more than your sin. It covers your steps. And even when you wander, He knows how to reroute you. He's not intimidated by your confusion. He's not anxious about your questions. He's God. And even your detours can't destroy His design for your life. It's not always the fastest way, but it's the most faithful way, because it's producing something you'll need later. That character, that humility, that endurance, it's being shaped in the detour. And you may not see it now, but one day, when you're standing in the place God promised, you'll realize that every delay, every disappointment, every detour was necessary. You'll see how God used the unexpected to lead you into the extraordinary. You'll look back and thank Him that it didn't happen the way you wanted it to, because the detour wasn't a distraction, it was development. And while you were focused on arrival, God was focused on alignment. He was making sure your heart could handle the blessing, making sure your vision was refined, making sure you didn't just show up with ambition, but with anointing. And that doesn't happen quickly. That happens on the long road, the uncomfortable road, the detoured road, the road that breaks you down so it can build you back up stronger. You may not like the road, but you can trust the one leading you on it. He knows where He's taking you. He knows why it's taking longer. He knows what He's doing with every twist and turn. And even when it feels like you're off track, you're still in His hands. Even when you don't understand the path, you're still under His plan. The detour isn't the end of your story. It's part of the structure He's building in your soul to support the story He's writing. There's something uncomfortable about waiting, especially when you know what God has promised you. You carry the vision in your heart. You replay the word He spoke over your life. You remember the confirmation, the prayer, the moment it all became real. And yet nothing seems to be moving. You check the mirror and it looks like you're standing still. You open your Bible for comfort and instead you feel convicted. You go to pray and it feels like heaven's quiet. You want to scream at God, where are you? But maybe the better question is, hey God, what are you doing? Because while you're asking for movement, God is aligning the pieces. While you're looking for a sign, He's placing people in position. While you're stuck on how long it's taking, He's focused on how solid He's making you. That silence you keep hearing is not God's absence. It's His precision. He's crafting something intentional. And that's where faith grows, not in the fulfillment, but in the frustration. Not in the breakthrough, but in the buildup. You're not just waiting for a door to open. You're being reshaped so that when it does, you're ready. The waiting season is not a throwaway season. It's not a buffer between the real chapter. The waiting is where God works on your perspective. It's where he tears down the idols you didn't even realize you built. It's where he tests your loyalty, your consistency, your motive. Do you want the calling or the clout? Do you want the miracle or just the moment? Do you want his will or are you using him to get yours? These are the questions that only get answered in the delay. You see, you can pretend when everything is moving. You can perform when the spotlight is on. But in the delay, your heart gets exposed. Your motives come to the surface. Your dependencies start to shift. And that's exactly why God lets you sit in it for a while. Not because he's punishing you, but because he's perfecting you. He's stripping away the need to be validated by outcomes. He's pulling you into a place where your trust is not in what he gives, but in who he is. It's in this space, this tension between promise and fulfillment, that your character is formed. This is where endurance gets built. This is where trust becomes more than a church word. This is where obedience becomes costly. Because following Jesus when everything makes sense is easy. But following him when nothing makes sense, that's where the roots go deep. That's where you stop chasing applause and start pursuing alignment. That's where you learn to walk by faith and not by sight. Sometimes God delays the promise because he's more concerned about who you're becoming than what you're receiving. The blessing might be ready, but are you? If he gave it to you too early, would you idolize it? Would you lean on it instead of leaning on him? Would you lose your intimacy because you gained influence? These are the questions delay is designed to answer. It's not just about arriving at the promise. It's about arriving whole, humble, and holy. And just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it's not going to happen. Delay is not denial. Sometimes delay is just divine timing, disguised as disappointment. But God has a way of using time not to hold you back, but to hold you together. He's not late, he's layering. He's stacking grace upon grace, mercy upon mercy, preparing not just the table, but preparing you to sit at it. He's not just building the blessing, he's building the soul who will carry it. You might feel like nothing's happening. But God is building. You might feel like time is wasting. But God is investing it into your destiny. Every day you stay faithful when it would be easier to walk away, he sees it. Every moment you choose prayer over panic, worship over worry, obedience over option, he's shaping you. And when the time comes, you won't have to force the door open. You'll walk through it with confidence because you'll know it wasn't your hustle that got you there. It was his hand. So if you're in the delay, don't despise it. Dig into it. Let it stretch you. Let it teach you. Let it reveal the areas you still need to surrender. Because when the day finally comes, and it will, you'll look back and thank God for every moment he didn't move on your timeline. You'll see how the wait wasn't wasted, and the delay was a gift. What you thought was God ignoring you was actually him forming you. What you thought was a closed door was really divine construction. And what you call the delay was really God's design to deliver you into something greater than you could have imagined. So stay faithful, stay rooted, stay available, because he's not just going to fulfill his promise. He's going to fulfill it through the version of you that only the delay could produce.